Ten Commandments, famously, right? God's top 10 list before Letterman. God had a top 10 list. And, these are the big 10. There's 613 mitzvot total, but these 10 are pretty significant. Famously, the list is, I'm the Lord your God, basically belief in one God, not having other gods, not creating images, or swearing in God's, taking God's name in vain. We have the idea of keeping the Shabbat, honoring one's parents, and then we have a list of do-nots. 5 do-nots, right? What are the do-nots? So, I have a chumash in front of me. Might as well go to the original text. And let's explore the do-nots. So this is the Torah portion of Yitro. I'm not going to pull it up on my screen. You're just going to have to take my word for it and work off of your own memory. So here it is. Here it is. The Torah says the following: you shall not murder. Okay? It doesn't say, by the way, you shall not kill. It says you shall not murder, which, there are nuances there. Then it says you shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal, which is understood by our sages. Hold on, I'm going to tell you that soon. It says you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, and then it says you shall not covet. Those are the last 5. So do not kill, do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, and do not covet. Now, our sages tell us that most of those do nots are actually capital crimes. Most of those do nots are capital crimes. Murder, of course, is a capital crime in Torah. Torah has a capital punishment. Not that it applies capital punishment very often, as we discussed, I think, even yesterday. It's very infrequent, very rare that capital punishment is actually applied. Nonetheless, there is capital punishment in Jewish law, number 1. What about adultery? Yep, adultery, according to Jewish law, adultery is also a capital crime. One might ask, why? Listen, I can only tell you what it says, that it's a capital crime. As far as the rationales, I can tell you also what some commentaries and sages have offered, but no rationale that is humanly invented can ever speak to the truth and true wisdom of God's message. But in short, the idea is that the Torah is expressing its belief. It's very strong belief in the value of the family unit, and of keeping that sacred, and a violation of that is a capital crime, as is something like murder. So that's that. Then you have do not steal, do not commit theft, which I need to clarify. According to the Talmud, according to our sages, that commandment, do not steal, is not referring to pilfering, stealing money from the cash register, or walking out of the store with a lollipop, or even armed robbery. What we're talking about here is theft of human beings, which is kidnapping or human trafficking. So that is the capital crime. The capital crime is not theft, petty theft or whatever it is. That is replaced with money. But when we talk about stealing human beings, human trafficking, kidnapping, that's a capital crime. So I just want to give you a picture. So in today's reading, the reading opens with a conversation, with a discussion about the sin of adultery. And the conversation talks about not the punishment, but what to do in a case where it's actually a question, we're not sure if anything actually happened. Here's the scenario. Adultery is forbidden if you have people who are married. So again, anything out of that marriage would be forbidden. Again, there's a capital punishment. So if, let's say, somebody commits adultery with a married woman, so then both are liable for death. Both the man and the woman are liable for death. Again, whether that would happen or not, probably it wouldn't happen, because based on all the criteria of Jewish law, it probably would not happen. But again, that's the level of that it's at. It's like that level of an indiscretion. It's like the highest level of indiscretion. Okay. And how do you prove that, though? As you may remember from our Jewish legal courses, that everything is established in criminal cases, or in these types of cases. The way that Torah works, Torah has a very high level of proof. It's not just I think circumstantial. It kind of seems that way. No, proof is validated by virtue of two eyewitnesses. Two people who have seen that thing happen. If two people haven't seen it happen, then there's no certainty that it actually happened, and you cannot move forward with the case based on that uncertainty. Maybe you could do other things, but you can't move forward and apply, that punishment or whatever it is without that absolute level of certainty, because we just don't know. Maimonides famously writes that if you see somebody chasing someone else with a knife, has a knife, I'm going to, God forbid, I'm going to, threatening their life, and chases them into a building, let's say an abandoned building, and then you hear screams, and you run in after it, and what you find is the person that was running away is now, God forbid, murdered, stabbed. The other person's holding the knife, and the knife is dripping with blood. I'm sorry for getting very graphic here. Let's say that happens. Let's say it's you and your friend actually that are witnessing this. Guess what? You cannot testify in a Jewish court of law. I mean, you can, but your testimony is going to be rejected. Why? Because the court will ask you, did you see what happened? And you know what your answer is going to be? No. I saw the before and I saw the after. Did I see the crime being committed? The answer is no. So in Jewish law, that level, the burden of evidence is so high because you cannot have any room for error when it comes to capital punishment. Famously, when I say famously, I'm just quoting our course. That's now famous, but that's why I'm saying famously. We've talked about this before. Many of us have had this conversation before. When it comes to the ultimate punishment, there is no room for error. You may know about these innocent projects around the country, and even in our fine state of Georgia, people, nonprofits that are dedicated to exonerating those that don't deserve to be behind bars and making sure that people are not executed if they haven't committed a crime. These are very important steps. Jewish law has a provision. Jewish law says it's never going to get to that place unless you have two witnesses that saw it and that are interrogated by the judges to make sure that they saw what they saw. Because notoriously, eyewitnesses are very inaccurate. That's the reality. Eyewitnesses are notoriously not accurate, and therefore they are grilled. They are grilled by the judges, not by lawyers. Lawyers aren't involved in Jewish law, in Jewish court. It's about the judges, professional judges that know how to interrogate, that know how to question, that know how to discern what you saw, what you didn't see, what you're making up, what you're assuming, fact versus fiction, fact versus conjecture. And they will ascertain that. The bottom line is the burden of proof in Jewish law is two witnesses, especially when it comes to capital cases. Excellent question. So Don is asking, what if somebody confesses? Confession is not admissible. Again, if we're talking about, how to patch that up with the relationship, if a spouse confesses, that's one thing. But if we're talking about, I'm focused more on the legal part of it in Jewish law, right? The legal part. It's a crime now because the Torah says not to. Fine. You need two witnesses. Admission is never accepted in one of these in a case like this in Jewish law. It's not, because we know famously confession is just like eyewitnesses are not trustworthy. People are not trustworthy about themselves. I was listening to a podcast recently about the DC sniper. Do you remember about a while ago, maybe 18 years ago? I think I even mentioned this in a recent class. Two people, an older man and a young man, actually a 17-year-old boy, teenager, riding around in a converted lawn car with a trunk with a hole in the trunk to shoot out and assassinating people, pumping their gas and loading their car from shopping. Horrific. Do you know when the police were putting out, for leads, they needed leads. They didn't know who did it, right? They were getting people admitting to it left and right. I'm the DC sniper. And I'm listening to this podcast, and the police are saying how literally they're spending hours and hours and hours chasing false leads. Not of people that think the other guy did it, people saying they did it. I'm not here to explain psychologically why this happens, because I'm not a psychologist. But I will tell you that the reality is this is possible. Now, I'm not saying that everyone who confesses didn't actually do it. But what I am saying is that's not a level of evidence that is allowed in court because it's too fraught with difficulty. It's too subjective. It's not objective enough. You would think confession is the ultimate proof. Torah law says it's not. By the way, you should know one of the upshots of this is, one of the benefits of not allowing confession is you've de-incentivized torture. Right? Torture, to get somebody to confess, he can't use it anyway in Jewish law. So why are you torturing? Maybe you want to get information about somebody else. In that case, go ahead. I'm kidding, right? But I'm just saying, like, you've de-incentivized that whole thing. But anyway, moving back to this case. So really the only way in Jewish law, again, theoretically, even practically it's probably not going to happen. Theoretically, first of all, today for sure not, but even back in the day, practically not really going to happen. But theoretically, the only way for it to work, or not to work, but to get to that place is if two witnesses see two people fooling around. Okay. Well, what if you don't have that? What if all you have are two people that see the two people? Just to clarify, you always need two witnesses. In Jewish law, one is not trusted. Unless you can, get two different stories and match them up, one is not enough. So, fine. So, what if you don't have two witnesses for the actual act? I'm going to use that euphemism, act, okay? But what you have is two witnesses that say, we saw these people check into a room together. Scandal, right? We saw them check into a room together, and it seems like that could have led to some stuff that, etc. So what do you do then? So the Torah has a very interesting protocol or possibility. It says if one spouse, right? Let's say the husband. The Torah uses the example of the husband. If the husband suspects the wife of infidelity, now there's no proof. But there is proof. There's no proof that an act took place. But there are two witnesses, and they've been, checked out. That she was with some other guy, right? But we don't know what actually happened behind closed doors. Maybe they were playing Monopoly. Who knows, right? So we don't know. So there is a way, theoretically, the Torah provides to check out the situation. And it involves it involves a special potion. She drinks a potion. If she's guilty, it's not good for her. If she's not, then everything is good. Now, why this weird thing? Why don't we do this by all cases? Like, we don't know if the guy with the knife stabbed the guy, so give him a potion. Why not give him a potion? Torah is giving a provision. Again, this obviously is not a thing that happens today on any level, but back in the day, this potion, you would take certain verses and mix it with water, whatever. The point is, because of the value in family and trying to heal this relationship, here you have a spouse that suspects the other. The other one's denying it, but they suspect, and they've lined up witnesses. What do you mean you didn't? These guys saw you with going into that room. Torah has an incentive to try to heal that relationship and get it back on track. So the Torah wants to help prove to the spouse that nothing indeed happened. Now, if it did, then whatever. If it did, by the way, Torah says that she would ultimately not survive, and the guy who she was with, right, both parties, would end up, whatever, because of this. It would be kind of like God performing that justice in this case, but whatever. But again, the assumption would be here, at least my assumption would be that, you have a spouse that's a little bit paranoid or whatever. This is a process by which you can almost prove it, not almost, you can prove that indeed there was nothing going on. However, I want to focus on, I'm giving you kind of the overview. This is known as the laws of Sota. Fine. I want to give you, not Soda, that's something else. This is Sota with a T. Now, I want to share with you the opening lines of the reading of this story. Now, one second. Let me see if I have this pulled up. Let me pull it up and then I'll share it with you. Okay, here we go. I'm going to share this with you. What I'm telling you is the way the Talmud and Jewish law understands these verses. If you read the verses at face value, it may be confusing or look like something else. Don't worry about that. What I'm telling you is the way the halacha works, the way Jewish law works. Again, back in the day when you had this whole situation, a temple and whatnot. But I want to highlight here. You should be able to see the screen. I want to highlight this verse, verse number 12. Okay, here we go. So God says to Moses, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, should any man's wife go astray and deal treacherously with him? Again, giving the example of, let's say, the wife is now the suspected, infidelity. Fine. But I want to focus on this word. Now, deal treacherously means like she's kind of sneaking behind his back. That's what it means. And we don't know that anything happened, but we know that she was hanging out with a guy in a room, secluded, whatever. But I want to use this word, I want to mention this word astray. Because in the Hebrew, and this is really where I want to go with this, the Hebrew word is sisteh. It's hard, hold on, let me see if I can, how do I make this bigger? Can I? I don't know if it's going to work. Ki sisteh ishto. Sisteh. Yeah, sisteh. That means astray. Here's what I want to share with you. The Hebrew word, that is related to a Hebrew word, shtus. You know what the word shtus means in Hebrew? Shtus means a folly, something foolish, something silly, something not wise. So it doesn't actually mean like treacherous or evil or nefarious. It means something foolish. When you do something like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? That was so foolish. I cannot believe I did that. Like, what a mistake. That was such a bad mistake. Like, what was I even thinking? Like, oh, so silly, so foolish. That's called the shtus. Shtus means like somebody says, I have the shtus in my head that I want to go, kayaking down the Amazon. By the way, that might be fine. But, somebody who's not going to do it says, I have this like folly, this crazy idea. So shtus is like a crazy idea, like a wild idea. So the Torah uses that word or a similar form of that word that's translated here as astray, which leads our sages to say like this. I want to share with you this statement of our sages from the Talmud, and then I want to speak about it. It says, no one commits any indiscretion unless there enters within them a spirit of shtus, a spirit of folly. No one commits a sin unless a spirit of folly enters them. Now, you might be thinking, what's the spirit of folly entering them? Is it like a magical, energy, soul potion, or not potion, but magical thing that enters them and makes them do something? No, it just means that we wouldn't make a mistake, right? No one would make, unless you didn't have like a foolish thought enter your head. When the foolishness enters your head and you act on it, well, then that's when mistakes happen. But otherwise, if we're acting in our right mind, in other words, the Talmud is saying that negative behavior is an aberration. It's not we really, most of the time, 90% of the time, or even more, we know better. So why are we doing things perhaps that we shouldn't do? It's because of the shtus, of the spirit of folly. Now, that's not the same thing as pleading temporary insanity. That's something else. That's a legal thing. But it does kind of mean that, temporarily you weren't thinking straight. But the question is, why not? And here, I want to share with you what Kabbalah says about it. So I'm giving you the Torah verse, the Talmudic analysis, and now I want to give you the spiritual, mystical analysis of it. So Kabbalah teaches that the mind, and this is not just Kabbalistic, but Kabbalah emphasizes the mind is extraordinarily powerful. And part of the power of the mind is that it can justify lots of things. And the justifications that the mind can pull off are very acrobatic. You ever see acrobats who can contort and bend in all sorts of directions, and you're like, how do you even do that? Okay, the mind can do that also. The mind can contort in so many different directions to justify behavior that we know is not okay. Stuff that we know is not cool. But we say, but it's okay. Typically, we don't do something negative unless we've justified it in the head first. It's very rare, or it's, I think, more rare for somebody to say, I know it's wrong, I have no justification, this is terrible, I'm doing it. It's usually like, I know it's wrong, but whatever that is. And by the way, there's a book that we've studied before on Sunday mornings, Kabbalah and Coffee, called Overcoming Folly, which speaks about all of these different types of follies. I'll give you a few examples, right? This is off the cuff, off of memory. One type of folly, I'm just using that word folly, one type of shtus is justification. Is a person who says, well, it's not so bad, I'm just doing it once. Listen, if I was doing it all the time, I would never do that. But one time, what's the big deal? That's a justification. Now, the way to debunk that is to say, look, if it's not right all the time, then it shouldn't be right even once. Like, what's the difference? Just frequency. If it's not right, it's not right. So it doesn't make sense. The justifications don't really hold water, but they're enough to get us past that checkpoint. All right, I'm doing it. I got some sort of, thing. Let's go ahead. So again, one of them is, I'm just doing it once. One of them might be, well, who's getting hurt? No one's getting hurt because of this. No one's going to ever find out. There's no victim. No one's going to get hurt. It's just whatever. Or sometimes a person might say, I'll give you another one. I deserve this. I've been doing this, that, or the other. I deserve this moment to whatever it is that otherwise wouldn't be okay, but I'm justifying, I deserve it. Or maybe if we're doing something that's not nice to another person, we tell ourselves, they deserve it. You know what, they deserve it. All of these are justifications, and they're countless. Listen, here's the bottom line. There's no tzaddik that only does good, and King Solomon says, Ain't tzaddik baras she'astav v'lo. There's no tzaddik, there's no righteous person that only does good and doesn't, somehow fall short. So we've all been there, and we've probably given a justification. So as many people as are on planet Earth is how many justifications have been spun and twisted to justify stuff that we know is really not, at the end of the day, not good. By the way, that's when somebody says, when somebody says afterwards, when they apologize, and they say, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. Yeah? A person might say, I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't acting in my right mind. What does that mean? Of course you were thinking. Yeah. What the person is expressing is from a place of true thinking. What I did doesn't make sense, and what I did is not okay. But from my place then of this distorted shtus reasoning, this folly reasoning, this foolish reasoning, it made sense in the moment. So that's a little bit about the word shtus. What's important, though, to realize is that we have the power to combat these feelings, these mental contortions, these justifications, before we act on that behavior. And I want to give you one way to do that. I want to give you a scenario. Imagine two people love each other. Well, let me just say, one person loves this other person, right? They love the other. Is it possible that they could do or say something to her, that the other one is hurt by? The answer is yes. Even though they love them, they could hurt them, and it often happens. In fact, I would say if you have a relationship where one person was never hurt by the other in any way, there was never any friction or tension, it would be hard to imagine how, through the course of a long relationship, how that wouldn't at some point happen. But here's the question. Sometimes things happen, you didn't mean it, and the other person took it a different way, and it's not, you apologize anyway. Sometimes, though, you weren't being sensitive, right? You weren't being fully aware of the other person and what they needed, or what was the right thing to say. The question is, why not? And here's what I want to share with you. I want to share with you what it says in the book of Tanya, chapter 24 and 25 of Tanya. And it says there that when, I'll give you an example. Again, the relationship example. If a person, imagine, I don't like using negative examples, but it kind of highlights the idea. Imagine if, God forbid, the significant other, I'm not saying yours, but someone's significant other, was, God forbid, in a life and death threatening situation, right? What type of approach would you have to them? Can you imagine the outpouring of love and sensitivity and care and concern? Good. So now have it today. You're not being called upon to be a hero today, right? Imagine if a loved one, God forbid, again, not yours, right? We should all be healthy and our family's healthy. Imagine someone else, right? I'm not ashamed of anybody. Ruvain, anonymous, Ruvain's wife, God forbid. Ruvain's, whoever, Sarah, gets sick? Would he not spend every moment that he can next to her? Yeah, good. So why can't he come home from work on time? Understand the logic? If you love her so much that you would sacrifice everything, so what about when you don't have to sacrifice anything? What about a little? Just leave, just end a little bit earlier, and then you want to, and just be home on time. And then when you get home, engage with her, and not turn to work or to some other things. It's a little sacrifice. It's not that big. You're ready to do the big sacrifice. God forbid, not you. Right? One is ready to do the big sacrifice. God forbid. It should never be like that. Okay? So then why not the little thing? And the answer is, the Alter Rebbe says the answer is because when it comes to the little stuff, we think of it as little. And because we think of it as little, we minimize it in our minds. That's the contortion here. It's a new form of contortion, I'm telling you. So because we minimize it, what's the big deal? If I'm on time or late, or if I say this or say that, or if I'm looking at the other person when I'm talking to them, or I'm looking away, it's not a big deal anyway. We tell ourselves. That's the justification. It's not a big deal. When it's a big deal, we can't deny it's a big deal anymore, right? In life and death situations, that's it. That's it. It's everything. The truth comes out. The Alter Rebbe says the truth is inside of you. All you have to do is tell yourself, this little thing is a big thing. That's all you need to do. Just one switch, one mental switch. The little thing is a big thing. Coming home on time is a big thing. It's important to the other. Right? Looking them in the eyes, it's an important thing. It's not a little thing. All that has to shift is it small? Is it unimportant? Or is it important? That's it. Because when it's important, we will show up. It's just that we told ourselves it's not that important. So then just tell yourself it is important, and that's it. So what is the shtus? What is the shtus? Kisista ishto, his wife that turns astray. What does it mean? It means, of course, she loves her husband. I'm just giving this example, right? Just bring it back to the Torah. She loves her husband. So what's going on? Let's assume it's just monopoly. But there is a little bit of, kind of covertly, she's not telling her husband about it because there's some. What's going on? She's kind of, swept up, and maybe it's not a big deal, and who cares or whatever. So all that you need to do, right, for relationships is tell yourself, it is a big deal. What the other one, how they feel is important. I need to be sensitive. Not because, it's a little thing, because it's a big thing. Every little thing is actually a big thing. And again, if we're willing to make the big sacrifices, if, God forbid, we would have to, so this is not a big sacrifice. This is a very little thing, relatively. Relative to that, it's a very small thing. The Alter Rebbe used the example of people who would give their lives for their Jewish identity. If they were told, historically, we know countless Jews, when they were forced, like, convert or whatever, they said, nope, not converting. Do whatever you want, but I'm staying Jewish to the very end. And the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that this is true even of Jews who were not very, practicing, not very religious, not very fervent in their Judaism, but when push comes to shove, that Jewish pride comes out, and it's undeniable. So the Alter Rebbe says, great, so you are proud. So then, if you're willing to give up your life, what about a half an hour to pray? It's not your life, it's just, you see, it's the same logic, right? But we think of it as, well, that's a big deal. This is like, it's not so important. So just tell yourself, no, this is important also. And if it's important, you're ready to go. So it's such a beautiful thing. First of all, the psychology and the analysis and the spiritual part of it, because it is inside of us. That commitment is inside of us. So again, it's just about telling yourself and really believing. It's not, you can't fool yourself, right? Because only fools are fooled. So if you fool yourself, then you're fooling a fool, and that's not a good thing. So, all right. So don't fool yourself, but really believe. Really believe that, yes, this is big. It's not small, it's big. By the way, I will say in relationships, just my perspective is, every little thing is very important. That's the truth. Because what's a big... Yeah, there are big things that could, make or break a relationship. Fine. Yes. Granted. But you know what? Really, relationships are made and broken by the little stuff, by the everyday stuff. Those stuff, it builds on each other. And anyway, that's about that. I want to share with you one more insight into this narrative, and then I'm going to close out because I'm looking at the time now, which I lost track of for a moment. But one more point. I mentioned before, parenthetically, that, if she drinks the waters, which is like the potion, and nothing happened, then not only is everything fine, but she's actually blessed. And I think this is an important message in life in and of itself, and that is that sometimes from the most challenging moments, here you have a tense situation in this family. The husband is suspicious about the wife, and she's now kind of proving herself. It's like a whole. It's going to be tense. Can you imagine that relationship at that point? Now, when she's like, nothing happened, sigh of relief. But you can imagine, how do you go back? It's kind of like, it's a little bit tense, right? It's a little bit tense. The husband was accused and suspicious, and she was innocent. It's like, the Torah says that she's granted additional blessings, and that helps move things forward. And I think this is true. I want to take it away from the specific scenario in the Torah story, which is fascinating. But in life, we all go through difficult times. And this is a truth that I've mentioned countless times. The goal is not just to make it to the other side, but the goal is to make it out stronger. And in relationship, this is true. We don't ask for tensions, but when tensions happen, we hope to not only survive, but to come out stronger. That's the ideal. When we go through challenging times, in every area of life, whether it's, God forbid, health, finances, anything, right? The goal is, the hope, the prayer is that we not only survive, but that we come out. Come, say hi. Come. Okay. I was calling Naso over to say hi, but he's in the middle of class. Hey. Okay. So bottom line is, the goal is not just to, okay, so there was suspicion, tension, and now, okay, it's resolved. No, we just don't, resolution is not good enough. It's not good enough. If there was a dip down, you don't want to just get back to where you started. Imagine like a line, it dips, where are you going after that? Back up to where you were? No. If you already went down, then you got to go up further. That's the rule in life. And we have to make sure that happens. Again, in the story of the Torah, there was an extra blessing from God and whatever, that's fine. But I want to talk about you and I. You and I, if we're going through any challenges, first of all, please God, we shouldn't. God should give us blessing to not lead us to challenge. If we find ourselves in a challenge, God should give us the strength and the energy and the insight and whatever we need, whatever blessing we need to get out of it, but not just to get out of it. Our prayer should always be to go even higher than before. In whatever area, that's like general, just go up. Relationship should be better than before. Money should be better than before. Health should be better than before. That should be the goal. In the language of Kabbalah, we call this Yerida Letzorech Aliyah, which means a descent that even higher. And I want to end with this point. The greatest example of this is probably the descent of the soul, your neshama, into your body. The soul was doing fine up there. The soul was in heaven, close to God, basking in spiritual light, chilling like Bob Dylan. I mean, your soul was living the life, living la vida loca. Right? I mean, that's for sure. But then it comes down here, and that's a major descent. It moves away from spiritual, reality, perception, light, truth, God, etc., and it comes down into this place. That's a big descent. I don't think there's a greater descent possible. What's the point? To get back up to the same place? To get back to heaven? What's the point? It was already there. I'm doing a class in a few weeks called Life After Life. We'll talk about some of this stuff, but just logically, God doesn't take a soul from here, throw it down there, and then it gets back there. That's not the point. The point is to go even higher than before. Through the descent, the soul is steeled, strengthened, forged with a strength that it could never have gained or experienced basking in that spiritual cocoon in heaven. It's through this descent that it becomes even stronger and goes even higher. And that's why the blessing, for example, on a yard site is that the neshama should have an aliyah. The neshama should go up even higher, because it's always about the greater ascent. So here's my conclusion and my blessing. May we all not be faced with challenge. But if, God forbid, we find ourselves in a challenging situation, we should not only get out of it, but we should find the riches. We should find the the greater ascent that comes from the descent. So, a few points today. We spoke generally about the Sota case in the Torah. We then spoke about the idea of shtus, folly. We all are susceptible to justifying negative behavior, but it's not. We know later when we feel sorry, we know where we were thinking wrong, but in the moment it's easy to get caught up in the rationalizations. One way to get out of it is to tell yourself, well, wait a second. If push came to shove, if it was a life and death situation, would I be doing this? The answer is no. So then let me not do it now when it takes far less effort to just do the right thing. So that's again a way, a perspective. And the last point was about the blessing that comes through the tension. Should be an even greater blessing than before. All right, so let's be blessed. Let's not have challenges, and let's find the darkness. Sorry, that was awkward. That was incorrect. Let's find the light, the greater light that's inherent in the darkness. All right, thank you for joining me today. Tonight we have Torah studies. Don't miss this. We have a great class. I'm calling the class "Bless Your Heart," but I don't mean it in that way. I mean it in a good way, or maybe not. I'm not sure. You'll have to come tonight to find out. 7:30, Torah Studies Live, and stay tuned. We got more stuff coming up. All right, that is it. Tomorrow, same bad time, same bad channel. Join us. Great to see everyone. Take care. Hey, Sandrine.
Thank you.
Bye, Stephanie. Bye, Charna. Bye, Ray. We'll see you guys.